snub Trump. Is it un-American for the A-list to skip the inauguration when even Hillary's showing up? And she's back! Kim Kardashian returns to social media in a big way. But why are people claiming it's damage control for her family? Plus, Naomi Campbell talks about schooling the next generation of supermodels and building a brand new empire on the buzzworthy series Star. Hot Topics are in the house with Whoopi, Sunny Hostin, Joy Behar, Sarah Haynes, and Jedediah Bila. Now, let's get things started.
Yes! There is an update to a hot topic we did yesterday. After widespread outrage, the Republican Congress has backed down on their plan to gut the independent Office of Congressional Ethics. There's a debate over who made it happen. Some claim it was the pressure from the Democrats or the pressure from the people, and other people say it was Trump's tweet. What do you think?
It was probably all of that.
I think it was,
all of
it was
it.
a combination.
I mean, people actually looked up the congressman's number and called it. And made, we have power. We have power.
What you said yesterday, and I thought, well, what can people really do? They called in droves, apparently, and that made a difference. But that made a difference. But what was interesting to me was some Republicans did say that Trump tweeting his dissatisfaction with it also made a difference to them. So I think when the leader of your party, the future president, says, why are you doing this instead of focusing on something else?
Like he said, why are you doing this, like he really cared about that? It was about priorities, as we mentioned.
Yes, priorities,
so
exactly.
Let's be really
There
clear.
was a bad optics, too, when you have the first day of a Republican-led Congress and the campaign, the election was won on we're going to get rid of the, drain the swamp, all this stuff, and then you come out and say we're going to remove an independent committee that checks us. It just looks really bad.
What Trump tweeted was, with all that Congress has to work on, do they really have to make the weakening of the independent ethics watchdog, as unfair as it may be,
that's where it becomes the issue.
Their number one active priority?
See, let me just one point to what you just said. I think that the fact that they shamelessly did that showed you the hubris that they have in Congress right now, and that the American people stood up to it is a phenomenal thing and should be noted by Americans out there, most of whom did not vote for Donald Trump. And we have the power to do that over and over again, because they're going to try and take away Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. They're going to go into all of the social nets that we have. And people need to know you have power.
Your voice doesn't just matter at election time.
I'll tell you something. The Democrats don't have power, but the American people do. And the American people have telephones.
I think it was also, on that point, what was a positive note for me, the reports are that the House didn't have the votes anyway, that they needed to get a certain number of votes, and Republicans in the House were standing up. Sometimes you don't see them come forward, maybe they're not front and center saying, but internally, a lot of Republicans, I hear it, were saying, this is not what we're about. We did focus on issues here. A lot of people voted for Trump because they cared about the economy, because they cared about Obamacare, because they cared about issues. And for them, you're disappointing the people who voted for him by doing something like this. So I respect the Republicans. And you know what? Thank you to Trump for coming out and saying, this isn't what people voted for me for. Because I think when the leader of the party makes a statement like that, I think it does trickle down. And people say, look, this is going to be the next commander-in-chief. He is in many ways setting the tone. And Republicans behind the scenes were saying, if he's not going to tolerate this, and the American people aren't going to tolerate this, and people within our own party aren't going to tolerate it,
tolerate it at a later date.
Yeah,
but that was the point.
But they thought that he had their back on
didn't
this,
get that from
and he didn't.
Well,
so
here's the
that was
thing.
interesting.
As you guys said, a lot of factors went into that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And let's leave it at
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
You know,
All right.
the CEO of Ford claims that their decision to cancel plans for a factory in Mexico was not because of Trump's presidency, but because of a lack of demand of small cars in America. He does say that he's confident that some of the policies that he feels Trump is going to pursue are good things, and they'll keep their eye on that. But, you know, the question is Trump going to get credit for that as well?
I think he should. I actually don't believe the CEO, because he also then went on to say, I did call Trump and tell Trump about my decision, about Ford's decision. And if you think about it, after this decision was announced, the Ford stock went up 3.3% to $12.54, up 41% a share, while the Mexican peso fell. So I think that Trump should, in some sense, get credit for that decision.
Only if you make sure that the outgoing president gets credit for saving the auto industry.
And he should.
And if you're going to do that, because realistically, this will tell you a lot. Because for an auto industry to take jobs out of the country when you know the country is struggling seems very kind of odd to me.
Yeah.
And call me crazy. I know I think strangely, I get it. But if you're going to talk about taking jobs out, this is the problem. See, I don't feel like it's the people's fault. People want to make money. CEOs don't want to pay what you have to pay to manufacture here. So if you don't want to do that, and you think he's going to be, he's not going to bring back the jobs. It's going to be the companies, because it's the companies who are going to make it better. If you start manufacturing things back in the United States, that's what makes the company great. That's what made us great, because other countries wanted what we made. Don't nobody want the stuff we made.
But in a sense, isn't it true that Donald Trump is making it easier for the companies to bring the jobs back, or keep them here, because he's giving them those tax cuts?
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah, but
those tax cuts on whose back?
Yeah.
On whose back? Who's going to eat it here? The people who do the work.
Yes.
Yes.
Because their income taxes, although
Well, not their income taxes. Listen, if you say, listen, we're going to get rid of your union, and we'll make our own hours. We'll do the stuff we think we should be doing.
they'll be working.
They'll
have
be
jobs.
Maybe.
They'll have
Maybe.
jobs.
Yeah.
So you think it's better to have a job that does not care about your health and welfare? You think it's better because to me, if you're working in an asbestos building, that's not going to help you.
Well, there is that point that they will also reduce safety regulations, which people need to be aware of.
I don't
Because then you have a Flint, Michigan.
I feel that's overregulated.
With what you're saying about jobs versus like unions, which protect their workers, I don't understand on a business model how a businessman could say, I can bring jobs back here, because how do we compete with countries that pay $1 a day? How do we take care of our workers?
Them.
Well,
And
how do we
that's
take
the
care of the
problem.
workers and make sure they are in good health and they have the protections and
we become they're going to do it. They're going to do it because people want those jobs. It's like we were talking about, I made the point that a lot of those jobs that people wanted, that you could have gotten in an interim if you're like in your 50s or 60s and you need a little something, those jobs have gone to people who have college educations because there's no jobs out there.
Yeah.
So now people are desperate for work.
Yeah.
Why can't we actually take care of the workers and do the work? I don't understand why we can't do both.
Well, who's to say we're not going to do that? I mean,
I think
because they're union busters, a great many of the folks who are been put in. I mean, I'm not making it up.
the ones that have been put in his cabinet.
Yeah.
the one policy, I think, when he came out and he said that he was proposing a tax of 35% on goods made by companies that shifted their production abroad.
Yes.
I think when he came out and said that, a lot of companies just smartly looked and said, look, this is going to, if we go elsewhere, it's going to cost us money.
We'll see.
If we stay here, we're going to save money. And that, from a company perspective, I think a lot of them felt that he was, in some ways, it was beneficial for the first time in a long time. They're coming out and saying to stay in America. That was one of his campaign promises.
Let me tell you about that campaign promise. When you promise companies that you're not going to follow any of the regulations. You're going to get rid of those regulations. You're going to make it easier for folks to get stuff done. That hours are going to change. You can hire who you want, the way you want. You can make your own time. There are issues there that are very, very specific. And the reason so many of these unions came into being is because business did not look out for their people.
That's right.
That's why. So business has to figure out how to balance this, because you don't want people working in asbestos. You don't want people working, you don't want 14-year-olds working in the factories. You don't want to go back to those days.
But is the answer to bring some of the wealth from the top? Because you're talking about companies here that those CEOs still walk away with millions of dollars.
Yes, but you're also socialist.
That's what I mean. How do you tilt? You have to go to socialism to get. You have to.
No, never speak socialism here. We'll be right back with more Hot Topics.
Still ahead, Janet Jackson's baby. How would the ladies handle being a mom of a newborn at 50? In this new year, everyone is celebrating
Happy 20th anniversary.
our 20th season.
20 seasons. Congratulations.
Congratulations, 20.
The big 2-0.
2 in a bowl.
Happy 20th. 20.
I lost my virginity when I was 20.
Happy 2-0.
For real? And you still happy.
Happy 20th.
Yeah, in 2017.
Happy big 2-0. The big.
It's on. Still ahead, supermodel Naomi Campbell looks back at making history with the late, great George Michael.
Welcome back. So, apparently many celebrities are refusing to take part in the Trump inauguration, and Bill O'Reilly claims that this so-called Hollywood bullying is what's keeping people away. Take a look.
Truth is that there is reverse McCarthyism going on in the entertainment industry. Remember that in the 1950s, Wisconsin Senator Joseph McCarthy started accusing people in Hollywood of being communists. That led to a blacklist where people were not hired because McCarthy smeared them. Today it seems anti-Trump zealots may be doing the same thing. If you're a Trump supporter, you're a bad person. A number of entertainers believe their careers will be harmed should they associate with the new Trump administration.
I wonder what.
So here's what I'm gonna say about that. If you don't go for people who don't support you, you probably won't get turned down as much. Now, I know that one of the people that supported Donald Trump was Ted Nugent. So why isn't Ted Nugent performing? He's one of your big supporters. Could it be that when you say things like, we don't need Beyonce to come out for us, we got the people? That's what you said, Donald. You said you had the people. You didn't care about the other folks. So stop going after the lefties to come perform. But if you think it's going to be an issue, go after the people that supported you.
Yeah, the problem is most in the entertainment business do lean left.
But that's not the point. The point is, if you want people to support you, go after your supporters. Don't go after the people who clearly did not support you and then label them as being bad.
The real sin of this conversation is to compare what's going on to McCarthyism.
Well, that's the other
People can
conversation.
Google McCarthyism if you want, and there are movies. I would suggest The Front with Woody Allen. You'll see it's a very entertaining movie about the subject. People's lives were destroyed.
Yeah.
I don't think that anyone's going to commit suicide because Garth Brooks doesn't want to strum on his guitar. I mean, people committed suicide. And by the way, he neglected to say that McCarthyism was directed to the left.
To the liberals.
So that it's to liberals.
Yeah.
This is not the same thing.
No.
Nobody's life is being threatened because they don't
Or
want
their
to.
livelihood.
And not to mention that McCarthy, you know,
Who do you...
There's a group in Hollywood called the Friends of Abe. It's a group of conservatives that they have a 501c3. For many years, they've gotten together. They come together. They have meetings. They're conservatives, and they actively vocalize that they feel feel that if they were to come out in support of not necessarily Trump, but conservative principles, or be a public advocate for conservatism, that their jobs would be in jeopardy. I can't tell you how many people.
But can you name anybody?
No,
Yeah, are they not
because they're terrified.
But
You know how many-
I'm sorry, no, you can't
Look,
make
I
those
promise
kinds
you,
of.
I have had celebrities come to me when I worked at Fox News and whisper and say, "I love your work on Fox News. Shh, don't tell anyone."
Listen,
terrified
that they because they like you.
No,
People, listen. Elizabeth Hasselbeck sat on this show for 1,000 years. She stood behind everything she said. She took so much crap from people, but she stood strong and she stood up. Nicole Wallace did the same thing.
True.
This is BS.
But these are actors.
It's BS.
But these are actors.
Listen,
It's different.
There are so many conservative. Okay, so what's the guy that did Frasier?
Oh, not that.
What's the
Kelsey Grammer.
Kelsey Grammer has been a conservative forever. He doesn't stop working.
Scott Baio.
Scott Baio. Well, I don't know about Scott, but there are a number of conservative actors who have been out and who are clearly out and have always been out, and they work when they work. But the idea that people are saying, "Oh no, if we do this," it doesn't make any sense to me. Like this argument,
I hear what
doesn't
you're
make
saying.
any
I
sense.
think there are people that can do that, but if you watch, even if you watch award shows sometimes, when the political ideology is injected, it always tilts left. I can see how
That's not
for a
the
20-something.
But that's not the point, baby. What he is saying is that people are afraid to come out and say.
there are people
and I'm
who are
telling
younger,
you,
who are
I
new
think
to the
it's
business.
BS. Well, but that's a different. That to me, that's a very different thing. When you're talking about people coming to do the inauguration, which is what he's talking about, and when you say it's like McCarthyism, I have to yell BS.
Yeah, I don't think it's like McCarthyism.
It's
Well,
not
that's
like
Bill,
McCarthyism.
that's Bill O'Reilly. Maybe
That's Bill.
Well, maybe he could do it. Go on the inauguration.
He'll go to the
And you know what?
inauguration, Bill.
He could do a dramatic reading from Killing Lincoln.
Yeah. You know?
Come on, Bill.
There are enough performers. Now,
Oh, that's entertainment, honey.
I think Bill O'Reilly is assuming that there are people that are conservative that have been asked to perform and they've refused to perform.
Assumptions.
which is why I'm saying Ted Nugent is waiting to be asked.
I'm not agreeing with him. I'm not comparing it to McCarthyism. All I'm talking about is that there is bullying.
Ted Nugent is a musician.
On the right. There are people on the right that this feeling exists.
Oh, you know, there's always a problem. There's so many lefties. It's like, it's not. The thing about Hollywood and having lived there, I've met people in the middle, on the sides, up and down, and everyone is there. And you have these conversations. But you know what? The biggest problem is if you're not up for that specific job, you're not going to get it.
But you don't think that if an avid Trump supporter were in the entertainment business and came out and were vocal about it, you don't feel that would in some way
what about
affect
standing
his
up for
ability
your
to get
beliefs
jobs?
then? What about standing up for your beliefs?
I support it.
Hold on. We'll be right back. Okay. This is where we were a second ago when I said, hold on. And now I'm moving my hands.
Just like that. I see your hands approaching.
What were you saying? Go continue what you were saying.
No, I think there are Trump supporters in Hollywood that aren't vocal about being Trump supporters because they genuinely feel it will not help their business, that it will not help their brand, that it will not help when they go to an award show with other people in the industry. And I think there is a sentiment with people entering the industry in their 20s and their 30s, just beginning. I have people who move from the Midwest that are conservatives that I know that go to Hollywood and say, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut through the election because they feel that they can't speak out. Now, that's not to say that older, people who have established careers, who are, you're talking about Clint Eastwood, you're talking about John Boyd. There's people that say, I don't care.
Right.
Like, love me or hate me. But people entering the industry, I don't think feel that way all the time. And I get
the
it.
industry aren't the people that would be performing at the inauguration.
Young people who are dealing with millennials are.
But there would normally be, let's face it, big stars, and I can't imagine that there are no big stars that don't have audience that are willing to do it.
Listen, the thing about
go ahead, Sarah. People not willing to stand up for their
Which
beliefs,
is bad,
and
but
that's disgusting.
I get where some of them are coming from.
I think I don't disagree that if they did come out, there are people that I think when they associate, this has been a different election than we've ever had before, and it was extremely divisive, which I'm still waiting for a big speech about how we're all going to come together. Still waiting. 2017. But I think the problem here is I understand why people don't want to perform, because I do think in this day and age it becomes a form of endorsement. I do think it's probably an honor to be asked, but in this particular year, I understand why people don't want to associate, and I do agree, Jed, if someone came out, I do think there's a little bit of
what you're saying is that he tainted his people who voted for him with misogyny, racism, sexism, bigotry. You're going to perform for a guy, a woman performing for a guy in a certain way who said he's going to grab you by your genital. That taints you as a performer. It's not like Reagan anymore, okay? The Republican Party is not Reagan's party.
You legitimately
this guy is not Ronald Reagan.
I agree. And if you legitimately have an issue with stuff that he said, and you choose to not perform, then I completely understand. And I think what they're talking about is people who potentially don't have an issue with him, want to support him, but feel that they don't have room to do that because it will potentially negatively affect their career.
I think that exists.
Well,
I think that exists.
It may exist, but again, if you're not comfortable enough to stand up to say, this is what I believe, and this is why I believe it. And also, I don't think this has anything to do with people performing at the inaugural. I think people don't want to be associated. People who are conservative, who don't support him.
Yes, that's
right. And there are lots of them. But this idea that, people are afraid to be, Hollywood is not this big, okay? Hollywood is gigantic, and one person, unless they're specifically going after you every time you go to work, it doesn't work that way.
And let's not forget that in McCarthyism, they actually had a list. Well, a written down blacklist. If you were on that list, you were never going to get a job in Hollywood. There's no list like that. The people who have lists, Nixon had an enemies list. Trump has a Twitter list, which we're on.
And a press list. And a press list.
You're number one.
I love it. They're great. But there's no list that these are the conservatives.
I think that's true, but also in the same way that you look at academia and you hear conservatives coming out and saying if the vast majority of the opinion being presented is liberal, and I don't fit into that.
Bull also. I wish that the conservatives would stop boo-hooing. Stop boo-hooing. Because you boo-hooed, listen, you boo-hooed because you didn't like anything that Obama did, so you tried to shut down the government.
Right.
Okay? You boo-hooed because you didn't feel like you were being heard. This is how the system works. You vote for the person you want, so you got it. You got the person you voted for. Stop boo-hooing. Stop booing and stand up for what you believe in. And if there are conservatives out there who want to perform, congratulations. Do your thing. But I don't think that if you go after Beyonce, you can be surprised that she told you to go off.
Agree.
I'm sorry. And you can't be angry. You can't be angry if you're going after what you consider to be the lefties. You can't do that after you just said not more than a month ago how you didn't need them. You didn't need these people. You didn't need celebrities. You said it. You said you didn't need them. And now they're telling you maybe they don't need you either. So, just saying. Now, because we really are a cheerful group, we want to congratulate Janet Jackson, who announced she is now the mom at 50 of a baby boy called Isaiah. Somebody will tell me how to pronounce the baby's name because I don't know and I'm not going to lie. It starts with an E and ends with an I.
Isa.
All right. Essa, Isa. Somebody tweet me, let me know. We'll be right back. Janet, tell me how to pronounce the baby.
Kathy.
A lot of people have a hard time getting rid of items from their past, like clothes or childhood toys. And scientists say it's because it feels like throwing away a part of yourself.
Yes.
Is it very tough to throw things away for you?
No, I throw everything out. My boyfriend jokes, like, he'll be across the room, and like the other day he had one sock on, and the other one was on the floor. I said, do you need these? And he's like, I'm wearing the other one. It's right on. And my mom kind of raised me to, you know, out with the old, in with the new. If you haven't worn it in a year,
Well, you better not get in the bathtub.
I don't have a hard time.
Throw that baby out with the bathtub.
I have a hard time with sentimental things, getting rid of sentimental things. Like, I have so many of my kids, you know, paintings that they did. I remember when my son was like 4, he said, look at he was looking through my like jewelry box. He said, oh, you have so many shiny things. I said, Mommy likes shiny things. So he went to Home Depot with my husband and bought me a bolt. Like a shiny bowl. He told my husband, I need this, I need this, I need this. So my husband bought it for him, 79 cents, and he gave it to me. Aww. And he said, because you like shiny things, Mommy.
That's special.
I still have that in the middle of my jewelry box. It's probably ridiculous.
No, that's cute.
That's a memento. That's a memento.
But the problem with me is I make everything sentimental. So, like, when I used to get rid of my basketball shoes, I'd pose with them. Like,
oh, God.
Yeah, that happened.
One of those.
Because I always wanted to remember each pair that I had. So everything becomes that shiny. Because I was a basketball player and I wanted to see like the different kinds I had, and like now I do it with almost every item. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sad, and then like date it and stuff. So I've got a problem.
I was thinking getting rid of what they say to get rid of. That's one of the things on the list that could relate to exercise equipment. Out.
Who has the room for that
equipment? What about bottles of booze that are more than 3/4 empty?
No, that's
why would
still
you get
good.
rid of that?
You don't do that ever.
No, I know. What's up with that?
You still have a taste.
Oh, wait,
a little taste.
What about the non-stick pans? That was interesting to me. Like those
are good
Teflon
for you,
pans.
Actually,
Yeah, those
yes,
are-
because
I have one for
after certain time, it wears out, and
I gotta get rid of
you
those.
should change your pans out.
Yeah.
What about that one that you can
your bras
you can
while
put
you're
chemical weapon in there and it still would fry that egg beautifully.
If you've had it for over 10 years, the
10
technology has probably gotten
What
better.
are you talking about?
No,
It's
this
just
one-
an easy bake oven.
An easy bake.
Did
Is
you
that
say
one of
something
your
you
things
put
you
in?
saved? Your easy bake oven?
If I do, we have an attic.
What about it says you should only have one set of backup sheets. So your backup
What if
set
you're
of
in the
sheets,
Ku
get
Klux
rid of it.
Klan? Wait a second. You need more sheets.
Don't ruin my sheets for me. They don't wear floral.
And backup set of towels.
But how many more people would they recruit if they wore floral sheets?
They would not.
I think that's a very good question.
You mean the Klan? Yeah.
Yes, I think that they could. You know how they say you get a lot more people with a dab of honey? Floral sheets, you guys. Try it. See what happens.
It would soften their image.
Yeah, soften their image.
Exactly.
We'll be right back.
Next, Naomi Campbell reveals how she's teaching the next generation of supermodels to walk the walk. Now, can she teach the co-host how to work it? And we're firing up this new year with... Thank you! Oh yeah, it's all happening here. This week on ABC.
Hey, now, before we introduce our next guest, I just want to say, you know, I know some folks are upset about me joking about the Klan. I get it. Sometimes you just have to poop on stuff that you think is not good. So that's what it is. So some folks got it. So let's get rid of that and talk about a fly, amazing woman. The real supermodel. When you talk about supermodels, you're talking about only one woman as far as I'm concerned, Naomi Campbell. She, as you saw, was in the late George Michael's unforgettable video, Freedom 90. Now she's kicking off 2017 and Lee Daniels buzzed about new series Star. Please welcome a fabulous, amazing model, an activist, an actor, just an all-round great, fabulous woman, Naomi Campbell.
Happy New Year! And we just saw that video. I mean, you don't look any different. It's just unbelievable.
No, I'm much more
Talking
She's a baby. Why should you look different?
just unbelievable.
Yeah.
But talking about the holidays, over the holidays, we lost George Michael. And you were in that video with Christy Turlington, Linda Evangelista, Tatiana Petit, and Cindy Crawford. Yeah. What was that day like?
The day of shooting the video.
Yeah.
Well, we were all different days. Linda and Christy were together. I was the first day, coming from a Terry Mugler show, which we did 5 shows from 6:30 a.m. in the morning till 3 a.m. the next morning. Oh. And then I had to fly in the first flight out, Paris, London, and go straight to set. I was exhausted, but I was so happy to be there and work with David Fincher, and so happy that George chose the 5 of us from the British Vogue cover that we did. And we were all singing the song anyway, because we loved the song, so it was, you know, but, I'm very sad that he's not here.
Well, did you keep in touch with him?
Yeah, I did, and I got to see. I spent a really special moment with him backstage at the finale of the Olympics in London, where he was in his dressing room, and we heard all this music and gospel singing, and he was back in his dressing room rehearsing with these gospel singers. It was amazing, and Kate and I just sat there and watched him. It was brilliant.
Gone too soon.
Really gone too soon.
Yeah, way too soon. So, and you posted this gorgeous picture from your holiday vacation. Yeah, oh boy, doesn't that look, there you go.
That is exactly how
You know, I was wearing that on my holiday vacation as well. But it kept dragging in the sand, and I didn't understand why. Anyway, did you make any New Year's resolutions?
I made a few. I mean, I guess, you know, you always want to better yourself and try to, you know, learn from your mistakes. And I think, you know, as I get mature and older, I just want to, you know, do the best I can and how I can. So I still have a problem with smoking.
Oh, really?
You still smoking? How much?
Less, but it's the hardest one.
Yeah.
Going back to the hypnotist.
Well,
Okay.
I'm going to, when this is over, I'll tell you how I stopped. It was the weirdest, simplest, dopiest thing never, because I was never going to
Because it's
stop.
not about replacing it with one of those other things. It's just you
have to stop.
Yeah.
That
No
happened.
nicotine gum?
Nope.
No.
So tell us, how did you? I forgot.
2 kids I saw in a video who have cystic fibrosis, children who can't breathe.
Right.
And the last thing this little boy said in this video I saw was, all I want to do is breathe like a normal person.
Oh.
And when I heard him say that, he was 9 at the time, and I thought, I spent 40 years smoking, and all this little boy wants to do is take a deep breath without fear.
That
did it. That did it
Absolutely.
for me. And so
fear.
every time you go, not fear, but every time you go to take, realize that there are people who
Actually,
can't.
there's someone in my life that went through something similar right recently too, so I know exactly what you
It's
mean.
an addiction. It's a bad addiction. You see, I mean, you see people smoking outside of hospitals, so you know that it's an addiction. So, you know, I was wondering, because we were talking about all these things that you have to get rid of in your house. And are you a hoarder?
No, I'm not a hoarder, but I don't have space. I don't like to have clutter.
Yeah.
So I get rid of all year through.
You're
giving stuff away.
How about clothes?
Like, yeah, because we do.
Well, who
I do
fits
this
in her
thing.
clothing?
I do this thing like pop-up stores. So, but I'm going to do a pop-up store in New York. I've never done one in New York. I do them mostly in London with Westfields, and I want to do one in New York because I've got storage of clothes from like 1986.
Yes.
And I just want to go through the ones that are really special ones, that the ones that Johnny gave me, you know, for keeping them for exhibition purposes, and then I'm going to do a pop-up store. I haven't asked my friends.
You must.
So, and to give to charity, obviously.
You can give it to Dress for Success.
Give it to charity.
Yeah.
But I think I just want to do it on my own somehow, because I want people that, you know, sometimes I want people that I know, if I might see them, that's perfect for that person, or, you know. So that's something that's a New Year's resolution.
And you have some really exciting news. You're in Lee Daniels' new show, Star. Super exciting. It's about 3 young women trying to make it in the music business and in the industry. And there's singing, there's dancing, there's drama, there's a little bit of everything. There's an amazing cast. You have Queen Latifah, Lenny Kravitz, Benjamin Bratt. And you play Rose Spencer, who's a pretty complicated character. Why were you drawn to her?
Rose is complicated because my husband is a philanderer who's Roland Spencer, Lenny Kravitz, and I need my daughter. I'm dependent on my daughter, and I'm pill popper and I'm an alcoholic. And, you know...
Doesn't get any better than that.
No, and it's like, you know, then my daughter goes to this impoverished area and I don't want her there. I want her back home with me. I'm trying to bribe my daughter to do anything. You know, and I basically gave up my career for my husband who's left me for a younger woman. Of course I'm complicated.
Well, we have a clip. We have a clip. Let's take a look.
Why'd you tell those people I was dead?
Good. I hope everybody watches it. I watched it last night, and you are so terrific in it.
I love working with Lee, and I'm just so grateful to him to be in another one of his productions. And this one's more of the African Americans with a legitimate business opposed to that empire that's not legitimate. And that, you know, there's still complications. Doesn't matter, wealthy, not wealthy. Life is still complicated and has issues. So it just shows the balance of the TV shows.
Well, as we go to break, I think there was a promise made that you were going to maybe help me with my walk.
I'm gonna critique you.
Critique.
Yeah.
Okay, don't go easy on me. Okay.
I think you have to slow it down.
Was it angry?
No, it's not angry. You're just gonna glide it and slow it down.
Was that not glidey?
No, it wasn't glidey at all.
Attitude.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah, it's better. That face is very pleasant.
Not too aggressive.
And warm.
One
You're
of the things
welcoming.
that you won't see on any other show is this. Now, you'll come back anytime. You know we always love it when
I
you're
love
here.
you both.
And I love my book, too. So our thanks to Naomi Campbell. See her in Star tonight. Check your local listings. And if we...
Celebs snub Trump. Is it un-American for the A-list to skip the inauguration when even Hillary's showing up? And she's back! Kim Kardashian returns to social media in a big way. But why are people claiming it's damage control for her family? Plus, Naomi Campbell talks about schooling the next generation of supermodels and building a brand new empire on the buzzworthy series Star. Hot Topics are in the house with Whoopi, Sunny Hostin, Joy Behar, Sarah Haynes, and Jedediah Bila. Now, let's get things started.
Yes! There is an update to a hot topic we did yesterday. After widespread outrage, the Republican Congress has backed down on their plan to gut the independent Office of Congressional Ethics. There's a debate over who made it happen. Some claim it was the pressure from the Democrats or the pressure from the people, and other people say it was Trump's tweet. What do you think?
It was probably all of that.
I think it was,
all of
it was a
it.
combination.
I mean, people actually looked up the congressman's number and called it. Made, we have power. We have power.
What you said yesterday, and I thought, well, what can people really do? They called in droves, apparently, and that made a difference. But that made a difference. But what was interesting to me was some Republicans did say that Trump tweeting his dissatisfaction with it also made a difference to them. So I think when the leader of your party, the future president, says, why are you doing this instead of focusing on something else?
Like he said, why are you doing this, like he really cared about that? It was about priorities, as we mentioned.
Priorities, exactly.
Let's be really
There was
clear.
a bad optics, too, when you have the first day of a Republican-led Congress, and the election was won won on we're going to get rid of the, drain the swamp, all this stuff, and then you come out and say we're going to remove an independent committee that checks us. Like, it just looks really bad.
What Trump tweeted was, with all that Congress has to work on, do they really have to make the weakening of the independent ethics watchdog, as unfair as it may be,
that's where it becomes the issue.
May be their number one active priority?
See, let me just one point to what you just said. I think that the fact that they shamelessly did that showed you the hubris that they have in Congress right now, and that the American people stood up to it is a phenomenal thing and should be noted by Americans out there, most of whom did not vote for Donald Trump. And we have the power to do that over and over again, because they're going to try and take away Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. They're going to go into all of the social nets that we have. And people need to know you have power.
Your voice doesn't just matter at election time.
I'll tell you something. The Democrats don't have power, but the American people do. And the American people have telephones.
I think it was also, on that point, what was a positive note for me, the reports are that the House didn't have the votes anyway, that they needed to get a certain number of votes, and Republicans in the House were standing up. Sometimes you don't see them come forward, maybe they're not front and center saying, but internally, a lot of Republicans, I hear, were saying, this is not what we're about. We did focus on issues here. A lot of people voted for Trump because they cared about the economy, because they cared about Obamacare, because they cared about issues. And for them, you're disappointing the people who voted for him by doing something like this. So I respect the Republicans. And you know what? Thank you to Trump for coming out and saying, this isn't what people voted for me for. Because I think when the leader of the party makes a statement like that, I think it does trickle down. And people say, look, this is going to be the next commander-in-chief. He is in many ways setting the tone. And Republicans behind the scenes were saying, if he's not going to tolerate this, and the American people aren't going to tolerate this, and people within our own party aren't going to tolerate it,
tolerate it at a later date.
Yeah,
but that was the point.
But they thought that he had their back on this, and he didn't.
Well,
so
here's
that
the
was
thing.
Interesting.
As you guys said, a lot of factors went into that. And let's leave it at that. The CEO of Ford claims that their decision to cancel plans for a factory in Mexico was not because of Trump's presidency, but because of a lack of demand of small cars in America. He does say that he's confident that some of the policies that he feels Trump is going to pursue are good things, and they'll keep their eye on that. But, the question is Trump going to get credit for that as well?
I think he should. I actually don't believe the CEO, because he also then went on to say, I did call Trump and tell Trump about my decision, about Ford's decision. And if you think about it, after this decision was announced, the Ford stock went up 3.3% to $12.54, up 41% a share, while the Mexican peso fell. So I think that Trump should, in some sense, get credit for that decision.
Only if you make sure that the outgoing president gets credit for saving the auto industry.
And he should.
And if you're going to do that, because realistically, this will tell you a lot. Because for an auto industry to take jobs out of the country when you know the country is struggling seems very kind of odd to me.
Yeah.
And call me crazy. I know I think strangely. I get it. But if you're going to talk about taking jobs out, this is the problem. See, I don't feel like it's the people's fault. People want to make money. CEOs don't want to pay what you have to pay to manufacture here. So if you don't want to do that, and you think he's going to he's not going to bring back the jobs. It's going to be the companies, because it's the companies who are going to make it better. If you start manufacturing things back in the United States, that's what makes the company great. That's what made us great, because other countries wanted what we made. But don't nobody want the stuff we made.
But in a sense, isn't it true that Donald Trump is making it easier for the companies to bring the jobs back or keep them here, because he's giving them those tax cuts?
Well, here's the thing. Those tax cuts on whose back? On whose back? Who's going to eat it here? The people who do the work.
Yes.